This is the ultimate buyer's guide for the Herman Miller Eames Lounge chair. We're gonna do a deep dive into all of the options. We're gonna break down the fabrics. What in the world is a Wyzenbeek method? What is a Martindale rub method? What in the world is a full grain versus a corrected grain? We're gonna do all of that stuff. And if this video helps you, please consider using my links below if you pick up this chair, or consider using my link in the YouTube shop. That again helps keep this channel going, and I really, really appreciate your support. Let's get honest. The first option you can select is the size. You can choose the standard size or the tall size. Herman Miller introduced the taller size in, I believe, 2009 because they noticed that the average height of people around the world was getting taller and taller, so hence the taller size. I'm gonna strongly recommend that for most people watching this video, you go with the tall size. I'm 5'6", I'm not very tall, and I find the tall size to be perfect for my height. The standard size, it seems like consensus says that if you're 5'4" and shorter, the standard size is probably best for you. For everyone else, the tall is the way to go. In my previous video, my friend who's 6 foot tall sat in the Eames Lounge chair, the tall model. This is the one I have here, and you can see his thoughts in the previous video if you'd like. The next option you can select is the shell. The shell basically means what wood veneer do you want on the outside of the chair. You get a different wood species, there are different colors as well. Most of them are gonna be lacquered finishes, but 2 of them are gonna be oiled. Lacquered basically means that it's a finish that they put on top of the wood. That's a very low maintenance. You don't have to do anything. If it gets dirty, you just dust it down, you just wipe it down, and that's it. There are 2 finishes though that have oiled finishes. That's the oiled walnut and the oiled palisander. Oiled basically means that you have to reapply oil to this veneer at least once a year, maybe more depending on how much direct sunlight it's getting. And the reason why someone would want to go through all that trouble to re-oil their finish is because Herman Miller says that finish reflects the original Eames the best. The original Eames that came out in 1956, 1957, it looks most similar to that kind of finish. I personally went with the palisander wood. I love the tigeriness to it. I love that it's got like a deeper reddish color as opposed to walnut, which has more of a brownish color. Keep in mind that the palisander does cost more than the other options though. The next option you can choose is the upholstery, and we're gonna do a deeper dive here. There are 3 general categories when it comes to upholstery for the Eames Lounge chair. You got your fabric options, you have your vegan leather option, which is another word for fake leather, and then you have your genuine leather options. Before I get to the fabric options, there's something you need to know, which is the Wyzenbeek method and the Martindale method. And this sounds really, really weird, but these are fabric testing options. These are supposed to be rub tests to see how many rubs can a fabric take before it starts to peel and starts to break. So the Wyzenbeek method is basically using a double rub method, which means there's something that makes contact with the fabric and does a double rub, and that counts as 1 rub. The Martindale method, on the other hand, takes something and it rubs it in a figure 8, and every time it completes a figure 8, that is considered a rub. Now, 30,000 rubs, a rating of 30,000 rubs with both the Martindale and the Wyzenbeek means that that fabric is qualified to be used for commercial use, or in other words, for heavy usage. And all the fabrics that Herman Miller uses on their Eames Lounge chairs meets that 30,000 mark, and some well exceed that 30,000 mark. One hidden feature that many people don't know about the Eames Lounge chair is that if you look right here, there's a like button that if you hit it, you get a wonderful surprise. And if you subscribe, you get to see more of this beautiful face in the future. The most affordable fabric option is called the Flammable. The Flammable is a blend of multiple materials, but don't let the affordability fool you because this thing's durability is ridiculous. On the Martindale test, which is that figure 8 test to test the fabric before it breaks or tears, it hit 120,000 rubs. To a reminder that 30,000 rubs is what qualifies it for heavy or commercial use. So 4 times that rating. Flammable is ridiculously robust. The next fabric option is checker. And checker has, well, a checker pattern. It's a blend between cotton and polyester, and it has a rating of 30,000 double rubs on the Wyzenbeek method. The Wyzenbeek method is the rub back and forth, so it did that 30,000 times. The most premium fabric option is the Mohair Supreme. Mohair Supreme is called that because it's made out of 100% mohair, which if you don't know what mohair is, which I didn't before this video, it's wool that's taken from Angora goats. This is a premium material. It's often compared to cashmere and silk. It's very, very expensive. It's very luxurious. It also has a Wyzenbeek double rub rating of 70,000. For those looking for a leather alternative, Herman Miller offers what they call their bamboo leather. This was recently released in July of 2024. It is a vegan leather, meaning a fake leather. It's made out of bamboo. It's from a company called Bamboo, which it's B-A-N-B-U instead of B-A-M-B-O-O. It's a mixture of plant-based material and polyurethane. It has a crazy high rating of 200,000 double rubs using the Wyzenbeek method. When I tried to look it up on other use cases, people's opinions on bamboo leather, I could not find a lot of information out there. However, the bamboo leather is quite expensive. It's just as expensive as the third best genuine leather option called the prone leather. If you're thinking about the bamboo leather because you want to be environmentally conscious, I found the results were a little bit mixed. Yes, it is true that the chemicals needed to tan leather are much more harmful to our world, but at the same time, it's not that you don't need to use chemicals to process bamboo leather either. Now, someone might say, well, bamboo is one of the fastest growing plants in the world. That's true, but you're still having to, kick animals out of their homes in order to get some of that bamboo. The general principle with leather is that the less processing, the less touching, the less messing around with the leather they do, the higher quality the leather. This is because in order to process it less, it needs to be a much higher quality hide. And so the price will be your guide. The higher priced leathers will be less processed, and the lower priced leathers will be leathers that have been processed a lot more. When it comes to the leather options, there are three things you have to keep into account. The first is going to be the thickness of the leather. The second is going to be aniline versus semi-aniline. And the third one is going to be full grain versus corrected grain. Thickness is self-explanatory. It's about how thick is the leather. And generally thicker is going to be the higher quality, the more expensive. Next is aniline versus semi-aniline. And aniline leather means that you are not processing that leather as much. It's a much more transparent tan, and it keeps the original coloring of that leather, of that hide. And if you look at it, you can actually see a lot more pores, and you can actually see kind of a color variation, very natural looking leather. Semi-aniline, however, means that they process the leather more. They process it first, and then they apply their dye to it. It's a much thicker dye. It's less transparent. And then they reintroduce color into it to make it look more natural, like an aniline leather would be. Something to keep in mind is that with the semi-aniline leather, that one is actually going to be more resistant to staining and scratching, but it's going to be cheaper than full aniline. And the reason why is because with full aniline, to mess with it, to process it as little as possible, that hide needs to be near perfect. So aniline is going to be more expensive than semi-aniline, even though semi-aniline is more resistant to scratches and to staining. Then there's full grain leather versus corrected grain leather. Both of these are using very high quality leather, the top grain, which is the topmost part of the hide, but full grain means that you did not process it very much. You can still kind of see the hair follicles on the leather, whereas corrected grain means that it was sanded, it's much more processed. Again, general principle is that the less processed it is, the more expensive it's going to be. When it comes to the genuine leather options, you have 5 different choices, starting with the most affordable and the most popular, the 2100 series. Now, what's weird about the 2100 series is that there is no thickness given, and it doesn't tell us whether it's a full grain or corrected grain leather. It does tell us that it's semi-aniline though. Next up is the Vicenza leather. The Vicenza leather is 0.9 millimeters thick, it's semi-aniline, and it's also got corrected grain. Next up is the prone leather. The prone leather is anywhere between 1.1 to 1.3 millimeters thick. It is semi-aniline and it's full grain. The prone leather, I believe, has been marked to have a texture that's very similar to the all-grain leather. The next most premium leather is the Stool leather. It's between 1 to 1.2 millimeters thick, it's semi-aniline, and it's full grain. I think the Stool leather is processed a little bit more to be able to offer many more color variants compared to the all-grain leather. The most premium leather here is going to be the all-grain leather. It's going to be anywhere between 1 to 1.2 millimeters thick, and it's also full aniline and full grain, which means it's the least processed leather of all the leathers on this list. To finish it off, the chair that I have here is the tall size with the palisander wood, the lacquered finish, because I didn't want to deal with oil, as well as the all-grain leather in white. When it comes to the color of this all-grain leather, it is a bright white. Like, it is a white, not an ivory, not a yellowish white. I really wanted and I love the bright white color, which is why I went with this one. I would love to know what options you guys end up going with. Again, links to everything will be in the description below. Until next time, stay safe, and as always, stay honest.